We have lots to talk about in tonight's video, including the latest rumors around the league. Tonight's trade talk revolves around teams like Montreal, Edmonton, Nashville, the Anaheim Ducks, as well as the Buffalo Sabres. Plus, we had a trade this evening involving the Vancouver Canucks. We have a major suspension involving Kings forward Tanner Jeannot. Lots of other injury updates around the league as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss today, lots of activity and injury updates and lots of rumors around the NHL here today as well. First up, just to recap a couple of quick important news items that did go down earlier this evening. I did do a dedicated video on it earlier to get the news out a couple hours back, but in case you missed it, the Vancouver Canucks did make a trade this evening with the Seattle Kraken, trading forward Daniel Sprong back to his former club in Seattle, only for future considerations. Of course, Sprong has bounced around a lot in his career. Obviously, he's, for the most part, proven to be a reliable scorer in most of his recent stops. Played last year in Detroit, but a season and a bit in Seattle before that. Has played with the Ducks, Capitals, a few other teams as well. I think he's played on 8 teams in total, which, when you get that many teams in a almost a team every year or every second year, it does set off a little bit of a red flag. If you've been successful, you can put up some numbers. Why can't you stick around? Some of it, I think, is his lack of commitment to two-way play. I don't know if there's any off-ice issues or not. You think if it was that apparent in off-ice stuff, that eventually he'd run out of opportunities to get contracts. But at the end of the day, things didn't work out for him in Vancouver. Couldn't gain the trust of Rick Tocchet to get more of a role and more consistent playing time, and it just wasn't meant to be. So they send him back to Seattle. Like I said, in Seattle's the team that he had his absolute best success with, scored 20 goals 2 years back, which was a career high for him. So at the end of the day, Seattle has had struggles scoring goals. They've had a string of losses together, so it could help them. It frees up a roster spot for the Canucks, a little bit of salary cap space. I mean, this is a combination of things. They are expected to get Dakota Joshua back here in the short term, and I think the other bigger thing is that they had more trust and they wanted to get more opportunities for some of the younger players. Like we've seen Arshdeep Bains, he's had a decent showing. And he works hard and has had to really work hard to earn his opportunities there. Baines has done well, so I think they'd like to give him a little bit more, and I think they'd like to get Jonathan Lekkerimäki up as well. I mean, I know it's early in the season, and he's looked good, and I think they're curious to see what he can do at the NHL level too. So those two young players, I think, just were kind of, I think for Vancouver, this seemed to be more of a priority to get more of an opportunity, and with Joshua coming back, they needed some flexibility, and things weren't working out with Sprong, so off he goes to Seattle. So we'll see if he can find his scoring ways again and duplicate what he did there before. And the other big news, of course, which are concerning to Canucks as well, after a really dirty hit in last night's game against Brock Besser, Kings forward Tanner Jeannot has been assessed a 3-game suspension for illegal check to the head. Of course, as we talked about in that video and mentioned in last night's video when it first happened, the hit from Jeannot to Besser was absolutely, there was no doubt it was dirty, illegal. I figured there was no chance that he was getting away without a suspension on this one. He was called a match penalty on the play as well. Certainly take a look at the if you haven't seen the hit, you definitely should look it up. I mean, I'd like to show clips on here if I could. But of course, the NHL copyrights everything on here on YouTube. Now, if you're not following on my other social media, like on my X account, that I'm actually able to share a lot of clips, and things don't get censored on there so much and copyrighted. So certainly check that out. Everything is linked in the description and on my About tab here on YouTube, and certainly follow along. X is another platform that I do. I mean, YouTube will always be my primary for videos, but I we'll be doing more and more there, and I do share a lot of NHL highlights and kind of add more commentary on it, which just adds another element here to what I do. On to some other news around the NHL. Lots of injury updates tonight. Of course, we know Austin Matthews for the Maple Leafs has missed the past couple of games. He was officially placed on injured reserve today. We knew he wouldn't play in the Detroit game tonight, which the Leafs did win 3-1. But this also now confirms he 100% won't play in the next game against the Canadiens. So the fact when you go on IR, you have to miss at least 7 days. Now the other thing here is it can be retroactive though. So they've placed him on IR retroactive to when the injury first happened, which was November 3rd, and he can return after November 10th. So he could play the next week. It may not be anything longer term. It's just kind of a day-by-day situation. Essentially, this is something that he was kind of already dealing with coming out of training camp into the regular season, and they just wanted to take some time and get it looked after before it got progressively worse. The Leafs have been doing fine here the past little bit without him. The power plays come alive, which is kind of funny. Maybe they'll have to see about maybe moving him to power play 2 or something, because they had the league's worst power play. Suddenly Matthews misses a few games and it catches fire. They've been really red hot the last, I think, 3 games now. So, obviously, when you get a weapon like Matthews, you're going to want to get him out there. But it's just kind of comical in a sense. It's weird how things work. You take away your top sniper and suddenly it catches fire. Hard to understand. But and the other part of that, too, is they were able to activate Connor Dufour from long-term injury reserve. So he's back. Now we have to wait and see what happens here with Hawk and Paws. We've talked about in recent days the Leafs could have a cost-cutting trade coming here in the next little bit. I mean, I know Nick Robertson, who was playing in his 100th NHL game tonight, has been a player that's been mentioned. Obviously had a really strong preseason and whatnot, but hasn't had the greatest showing here in the regular season. Nick Robertson could be one of those players. There's some talk with David Kampf, but I think that's going to be a tougher move. He's got more term on his contract. That's going to be less attractive from other teams. Connor Timmins is a name to watch, especially as Hawk and Paw returns. So the Leafs there's been lots of speculation around the Leafs. They are, I think in the next week or so, it's quite a good possibility that we will see some sort of trade, depending on how everything materializes with their other players coming back, because they got Yarncroke in that same boat as well. So certainly look for the trades that are the Leafs to be involved in a trade activity to create some roster space and cap flexibility soon enough, but they've obviously been able to buy some time here. Vegas today recalled Jonas Rongberg. We learned today that Golden Knights captain Mark Stone is day-to-day and will miss this evening's game. So clearly, Stone has missed a lot of time in the last few years. Usually it's around February when he goes out for the rest of the season. So it goes on a long-term injury reserve until the playoffs. That's usually what we've seen the last 3 years or whatever it's been. But yeah, day-to-day for Stone. He's out tonight. The Devils today recalled defenseman Nick DeSimone. The Ducks are the Penguins are playing the Capitals tonight. Another Crosby versus Ovechkin here late in their careers. Of course, that's always fun to watch. So those two teams have been rivals for so long. Brian Rust was activated today, and Cody Glass has been placed on injured reserve. Some news and notes around the Anaheim Ducks. Lots to talk about there. For one, in their lineups, Cam Fowler, who's been a name that's been out there in trade talks. We heard as the season was getting underway that the Ducks were looking to move Cam Fowler and that he was working with them to kind of expand his list of teams he would go to, since he does have a fair bit of trade protection built into his contract. He's now out day-to-day, so he's dealing with a short-term injury. That's not too big a deal and certainly won't have a big impact on a trade. It's hard to say when things will materialize for that. Clearly, Pat Verbeek and the Ducks are going to be looking for what they feel is a fair deal before they make such move. It's probably going to be later into the year before we see that, I suspect. But certainly, when a player that's been mentioned a lot as a trade piece gets hurt, it kind of can, not something you want to hear, especially for the team trying to move. And John Gibson, though, who's been another major source of trade talk really for an extended time, returns tonight. He will be backing up Lucas Dostal. Dostal has firmly cemented himself as the team's number one goaltender, rocking a .930 save percentage on a team that has struggled to win many hockey games this year. And there's lots of talk about the Ducks around what could happen. I know Frank Cervalli on his show was talking about Anaheim today, speculating, wondering if only, he's in his second year, if head coach Greg Cronin might be the first coach casualty of the year and could be out of a job. Doesn't mean for sure that's going to happen, but he wondered what Pat Verbeek's going to do. Clearly, they added some veterans. They got lots of young talent there. They have a goaltender who's absolutely been amazing this year, and they still can't get ahead. They're still not seeing the steps taken to progress and to really, take a big step forward with this rebuild. I don't think anybody expected the Ducks to be in the playoffs or to really be, cup contenders or anything like that. But they did expect to see these young players taking a step forward to win a few more games and at least to work their way up closer to respectability and to be more, kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel that you can maybe see, all right, the next year or two, we should hopefully be knocking on a playoff door here. And they're not really making that progress. And for a lot of teams, goaltending is tough to get. And when the team in front of you is not up to par, especially, it's not fair to the goalies, and they tend to struggle even more than they might otherwise. And when a guy like Dostal is standing on his head, putting up a .930 save percentage, which is really good. When he's been playing like the best goalie in the NHL, and yet your team still can't win a lot. It's frustrating, and it's certainly a case of what are they going to do? So there's lots of talk around Anaheim right now, whether it be a coaching change. We've heard, like I said, not just about Fowler and Gibson, lots of chatter around Trevor Zegras again. Lots of talk that the Ducks are going to be making, possibly here in the short term, some type of significant moves. They need to change the roster. Maybe they need to change the coach. I'm not sure what comes first, but at the end of the day, the current composition of the team is not working. And I guess it's up to the manager there, Verbeek, to determine what his first move is. I mean, clearly, I would think a trade is more likely, given the fact that Cronin's only in the second year. I know he seems to be the kind of coach that Verbeek would like and think, but if the players aren't responding, then is that the issue, or is it more of just the roster? That's up to him to decide that. But at the end of the day, we'll see. In Nashville, of course, we heard comments from Barry Trotz about going into a rebuild if things don't turn around soon, and pretty much the general consensus is that was kind of taken out of context. That essentially he's trying to get the players' attention and not trying to wake them up. That's changes will happen. Like I said, a lot of players there signed to a lot of term, a lot of money. Most of them are just like look at the Saros extension, the Stamkos UFA signing, Brady Shea, Jonathan Marchessault. O'Reilly's got term. Like, there's not much there that you can move easily because of contracts. So it's not going to be easy to send them into rebuild mode. But a few players that you could keep an eye on that might be, possible targets would be Dante Fabro and Gus Nyquist, who are both the only two players on the team that are pending unrestricted free agents. One key roster spot that Barry Trotz is definitely looking to upgrade and kind of solidifies a number 2 center spot. So I don't know if those are players that are going to be interesting or good enough to define that type of player. They do have lots of interesting prospects as well that they can call up or could include in a deal if they wanted to, and decent draft capital too. So I would suspect that you're going to probably, if anything, rather than see Barry Trotz start to tear things down, I think you're going to see more than likely trades involving the supporting cast to make some upgrades to make the team better. That's probably going to be your first move. Like I said, guys like Fabro and Nyquist are the most likely guys to go. And then, or maybe it's a Novak or, another player that's not big term, big money. And then you're trying to put together a package to acquire a 2C. That's definitely what the plan is in Nashville. You're not going to see a teardown anytime soon. It's just really not possible with everything that they've done there. And I know Elliot Friedman today on his latest podcast with 32 Thoughts was talking about how the Sabres are getting a lot of interest in guys like Dylan Cousins and Bo Byram. There are definitely players that have been getting a lot of chatter throughout the rumor mill. But he says Kevin Adams is not in a hurry to move those guys at all. And so far, he's kind of been telling teams that, I want to make a move. I want to improve my team. I want to add to my team. I don't really want to subtract such a good player like that in a deal. So it sounds like what Adams is trying to do is trying more to use maybe picks and prospects or future-based packages here to try to find an injection to this lineup, not necessarily to subtract from it. But I mean, I know they've definitely had issues on the blue line. Byram's actually been good. I'm not surprised they've had interest in him. I know I've even seen, I believe Samuelson was even sat out a game. So like they definitely need to make some they could use a move. But they've also been, the last couple of games, they suddenly got hot again. Like, they beat the Senators, then they beat the Rangers, and they really beat the Rangers bad. So that's only a couple games. It's nothing to get too overhyped about. But this is a team that, like Ottawa, like Detroit, is really looking to make a big jump in the standings this year. And if they don't make it, all three of those teams are probably not all going to be able to do it, because they're all fighting with each other, and they're fighting the big four in the division with Tampa, Toronto, Florida, and Boston. And, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy in the least. And if they don't get if they don't make the jump, there's going to probably be even more bigger changes in the summer. Like I said, Kevin Adams could be, I don't think he'd be fired completely, but I think he would probably be let go as a GM and reassigned within the organization. He's been with the team for a while, has a great relationship with the Pagulas. I wonder if he would, maybe talk to them about letting somebody else take over. I don't know, but something has to give there in Buffalo. But from what Friedman is saying, that they are very active, lots of conversations. Wouldn't be shocking to see a Sabres trade, but don't expect it to be subtracting a major player like a Cousins or a Byram here just yet. News that Edmonton is still no big surprise, but still very much the intel around there is that they're looking for a top four right shot defenseman. It's going to be tough to find. It seems like Stan Bowman and the management team there are willing to be patient for the time being. I don't think they're going to make a panic move here. The team has been up and down. Obviously, they know how last year went. They know this team's also very capable of going on a long run. So far, though, the supporting cast they brought in this year is not playing up to par like the supporting cast did last year. If you look at all the players that left Edmonton, whether it's Holloway, Broberg, Fogle, all these guys that left, that the Oilers decided that they, for whatever reason, couldn't afford or needed to move on from, they're all outplaying the guys that are there now, whether it's, Arvidsson and Skinner and, all these guys, right? So, the new mix there in Edmonton on paper looked great, and I thought they were going to be better than ever, deeper than ever, and so far it's just not translating. So we'll see what they do, but like I said, a top four right shot partner for Darnell Nurse is high on the priority list. Hard to say exactly what they're willing to give up for it, but certainly right now we've heard some names in the past, but a lot of the names that have been out there haven't really been the best ones. I think Connor Murphy in Chicago, if he can be available, if they're willing to move him, he would be a good option. I think the Seth Jones one, like I said, that was from 10 days ago from Friedman or something. He knew it was just a name that's out there, but it would be very, very difficult, almost impossible to do. And he's overpaid too, so you don't need another overpaid defenseman there in Edmonton. And in Montreal, again, lots of talk around their struggles. Is there heat on Marty St. Louis? Is there heat on management team? Doesn't seem to be. A lot of the insiders there are saying that Montreal wasn't expecting to be a playoff team this year. They'd like to see progress and stuff this year, but their expectations I don't think were as high as maybe some of the fans. But at the same time, you got to think that they'd like to see them doing a little better than what they are now and see some more progress, and that hasn't been happening just yet. So we've heard that they're not willing to mortgage the future. That they Kent Hughes is very active again, trying to find a way to make this team better, but doesn't want to mortgage the future, which is completely understandable. They've got guys they'd like to move, like Armia and Dvorak, but it seems like there's absolutely no interest in those guys. They're not going anywhere. There's, like we talked about the other day, they believe they can probably get a first-round pick for David Savard, but that's probably going to be later in the season. So, of course, they got Patrick Laine on the sidelines, hopefully back sooner than later with an injury. The big one for me, though, is I honestly I really think about Kirby Dach. I'm not 100% convinced that Dach is working out the way they're hoping. We know that's fair to say for sure. And I know the injuries have played its role, but I kind of wouldn't be shocked if he is moved. I really wouldn't. I don't have any intel to say that right now that they're having conversations about that. But I know, like I said, in Montreal, basically the main intel we're hearing from Elliot Friedman is that don't expect a big move out of Montreal. It's not like they're going to pull off a massive trade to shake things up here right now, because they weren't expecting to be a whole lot better than what they are. And they do want to be better. They're trying to find ways to improve, but they're not going to just do something stupid and mortgage the future. So, like I said, you're bound to get maybe something here, but I think they'll take their time, make sure they get it right. But I honestly do wonder about Doc. I really think if they want to improve that team, they really need to determine what his role is going to be and if he's part of that solution moving forward with the franchise, or if they could consider, moving him. Like we talked about the Anaheim Ducks a lot, and with their situation. They're kind of in a similar spot here as the Habs. Nobody was expecting them to be in a playoff spot this year, but both teams were expected to be better, making more progress than what they are. We know they had a lot of talks before around Trevor Zegras. I kind of half wonder if they could resume that. Would Montreal want to consider offering up a player like Doc, who's a player that Pat Verbeek would probably like if he can get him to play the style that he wants out there? Maybe that might be a better fit. I don't know, but Doc's biggest issue has been able to stay healthy. So hard to say. I don't have any, resources to suggest they're having talks for Zegras versus for Doc or anything like that. But I kind of wonder if it's something that could materialize based on where both teams kind of sit in the standings and what we're hearing about, neither team being thrilled with the lack of progress so far. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news or rumors in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.